And Just Fat with you today, hosting this show and having conversations that matter. They matter. And they're things that we must do, whether we like it or not.
Right.
You know, I remember my father used to say, look, this math, you'll pass it. It's not about, oh, can we have a conversation about maybe, no, you will pass this math. So whatever we need to do right now to get you to pass the math, we're going to do it. Whatever you need to do to get nations to get to the point whereby they're operating at optimum, we'll do it. It's not a question about, oh, well, you know, things went belly up. No. Should we have the conversations? Yes, we must. Must we then be involved in citizen-led conversations? We absolutely must. What do we need to do to get there? We'll do it. Mm-hmm. And that's why we have the conversations that we do. So let's keep these things front and center. It's not a back burner conversation. It's front, high impact, power burner that we're talking about and keeping them up and awake. And that's what we are looking at this hour when we look at the week that was on the Situation Room this morning and talk about the impact of certain conversations that took place between a day like this last week, certain events that took place, and today, and say what impact does it have on the days going forward. So we'll take a look at some of those things, and to help us out in that conversation, Madam President. Since she became president, she didn't come to see her constituents. She'll tell you. She didn't come back to see her constituents, but it's okay because now, as they often then now seek re-election,
as is the norm.
When they seek re-election, they come back and tell their people, I never left you. I was here. Angel Mbuthia is the national chairperson of the Jubilee Youth League. She's here this morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Drew. Good morning.
Some of them, they don't know what we're talking about.
Well, they've forgotten so fast because they're the ones who elected me.
They're the ones who elected as the president
on the show of Miss President that aired on KTN in 2022 to showcase the prowess of women and in governance and to expose Kenyan women to the day-to-day activities of a president. And it was heavily contested. We were over 50 contestants in the academy, went all the way to the top 6, and KTN also hosted us for the presidential debate, and Kenyans elected me overwhelmingly as their Miss President. Season 2.
How long is your term?
Well, I'm waiting for season 3 now, so
I told you
maybe
when they are seeking re-election,
we come back.
They come back.
I'm not seeking re-election.
Okay. So we'll call it season 3. Chege Majuice is also here with us this morning.
Thank you.
The Executive Director of the Party of National Unity, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, Chege.
Good morning.
People are also wondering why you're called Majuice.
Majuice, I got that name from university. After 2007, I was an IDP.
Yes.
So going to university, my parents didn't have that capacity, maybe to sustain me in the university. The 3,000 I was left with, I bought a blender in the university, and I started blending juice.
Yeah.
So from that time, I earned the name Juice.
There you go.
Yes.
You both join us this morning. I'm very glad that you've done so because of certain conversations that we'll be having as we look at the week that was and the impact that it bears. And we know that both of you in your capacities in the ecosystems in which you operate then bear something towards, development of activities, conversations that are necessary to have. So we're very glad that you've joined us this morning. Thank you for being in the hot seats of the Situation Room this morning. Even as we get into conversations, we're going to take you to the Benin Republic. It's in West Africa. It's a small nation, but an impactful one because it bears the remnants of a deep, deep culture of governance and trade and very many things that still are imbibed in a traditional yet emphatic culture. And the Fon people have very interesting proverbs. This country was colonized both by the British and the French at some point and still bear a lot of that colonization. But the African tradition still stands true in this country. So I want to share this proverb with you this morning. I would love to get your interpretation of it. And this is what it says. The green snake said, watching a person is better than biting. The green snake said, watching a person is better than biting. I'll start with you, Chege.
According to me on that proverb, of Benin is that sometimes it's good to watch than to provoke, because it's a green snake in a green grass, so it has already camouflaged. So it can be able to camouflage and maybe bite the camouflage and hide from this person. But if it bites the person, it has already exposed itself that there's a snake in this grass. So in this case, the snake opts to camouflage and have peace in that grass, and exposing itself.
Well, I find snakes very interesting animals, because I fear them so much, but human beings are not their natural predators. So we are not prey to them ideally. So they're very interesting. So when a green snake says, let's just watch and not bite, because once we bite, it's deadly. But then again, I would like to differ a bit with that African tradition, because the more you watch, I think the more the things get worse. I think even when we look at the youth of Kenya, they are crumbling today because of the things that they continue to see happening in government. And we are the green snake in the green grass, as Majuice says. And once we continue maintaining that stature, I think the more we are going to blink into oblivion. And I was just passing by the University of Nairobi, and I saw how celebratory it looks, because today is their graduation. And I saw the enthusiasm they have in them. I was once there as well. And we look at the state of education and the state of unemployment in the country. And if we continue to be the green snake in the green grass, we are going to find ourselves in trouble. We need to bite, and we need to bite hard. Yes.
All right. You need to bite and bite hard. In other cases, you need to observe. Perhaps a combination of the two. But that proverb has power, whichever way we look at it. So thanks for sharing your interpretations of that. Let's see how that reflects in the conversations that we have this morning. So it's just been 7 days, but it feels like 70, because a lot of things have happened between last Friday and today. And even as we're looking at that, it gives us fodder for some conversations that we'll have this morning. Let's start off from getting into the weekend. Of course, the political were at it, and it was quite something, right? Everybody had things to say, and then we come into the week where former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua says, if I'm going to be president, certain things are going to happen. PLO Lumumba said, you know what? Nobody should be there. Nobody who's even touched the hem of this political garment should be in this game whatsoever. We need to drain the swamp completely. Teachers went to State House, got some money, 100 million shillings down the drain, and probably some more on Sunday. And then we're coming into where we are being told a number of things, isn't it? If we look into the headlines this morning, shock as county wage bills rise by 11 billion shillings in a year. 10.8 billion shillings is the extra money you spent on paying allowances. Shock over 1 billion shillings poll budget. We want to go to the mini polls in the month of November. And we're going to need 1 billion shillings in order to do that. Wind of change is an interesting one that we're looking at, because the wind seems to be blowing from the south, coming up north, and they're saying, you know what, they said it, not me, 1 term is what a lot of these folks are going to be doing. And we just came up where the other day when it's a Shylock's haven, people can't afford to do life anymore, so they're going to have to borrow a lot of money. These are the things that are happening in Kenya. And it's not another country that we're talking about. All of these things happening in Kenya this 1 week. What does it say? What's your outlook as we look at the week that was?
And given that they are both woke to the realities of the nation, Chege is my good friend. We share the space of opinion and politics.
Right.
And so I'm keen also to continue this conversation, because the week that was has been very interesting.
Yes.
We've seen, as Ndu says, the wind from the south. We had Botswana just
Malawi
displacing an incumbent. Then we had Malawi. Tanzania is going to the polls in November. And then thereafter, we're going to have our friend from Uganda going next year. Then the year after that will be us. So, there's a lot to be desired and a lot to see from that. Also, you say today you have a graduation, but the lecturers are on strike. There is a lot. What's your feel on what is happening?
One thing I have to say that I have to agree with Pierre Lumumba for the first time, that if this country is going to stand, we have to drain the swamp, the entire swamp. Because a person like Rigathi Gachagua coming to say that he is the change that this country need, I saw some people saying that maybe he doesn't mean that he's running for president. He's running mad. Because we have seen Gachagua when he was in power. Gachagua when I think it was JKUAT, they were graduating. He went and told them there are no jobs for the youth. You can remove my trouser, you can whip me, there are no jobs. That when he was the deputy president. Now all of a sudden, he realized that he can be able to lead this country. A person who was impeached because of their differences with the President William Samoei Ruto. If you look at their politics, they are not addressing any single issues. I want to see a presidential candidate who will address the issues Kenyans are facing for 5 minutes without mentioning Ruto. Because you don't have to mention Ruto. Just tell Kenyans, this is what Kenya is facing. Don't tell us Ruto Meiba, where maybe Benin, because you have been part of it. I should tell people that the reason why Pierre Lumumba is saying that we have to drain the entire swamp, if you look carefully at this country, we don't change a regime. From 90s, a person who was a foreign minister in 1990, Kalonzo Musyoka, he became a foreign minister during Kibaki regime. A deputy president, a vice president during Kibaki regime. Now he's seeking to be the presidential candidate. You look at all these people from all that time. A person who Ruto came and told us, Ruto did campaign on the backdrop of Wameiba Pesa ya Kemsa. Watu hawana huruma. Who was the minister then? The minister then was Mutahi Kagwe. He was in charge of Kemsa, Minister of Health. We thought when Ruto takes over, the first thing he will do, he will jail Mutahi Kagwe. All Mutahi Kagwe will be taken to courts to answer to the to those charges. But what happened? He took Mutahi Kagwe and he was given a powerful docket, agriculture. And the other day he came and told us, Mutahi Kagwe, that during the Gen Z that was happening, the Gen Z was stealing fertilizer. You wonder, which are these Gen Zs that are so determined to do agriculture that they are even stealing fertilizer? You understand?
Yeah.
So, I agree with Pierre Lumumba, and I'm telling Kenyans, if you're not going to drain the entire swamp of all these people who have been in power before, there's no even need for us going to replace Ruto, because nothing will change. You realize these are the same people who form the next government. When we had Arore and Kimwarer that was happening, who was the Minister of Water at that time? It was Cherugui. During Uhuru's time, after Ruto came, he gave him, he was in charge of the Hasra and cooperative. Are we together? So there's nothing that changes in this country. This issue of lecturers going to strike and something, it has been, it's like a consistent epidemic that usually happen over and over again. We don't have a person who can come and say that I can be able to address the issues Kenyans are facing without looking at the lenses of the tribe. The people we have now in opposition, they have also grouped us.
Yes.
These are cousins, these are Nairots, these are what, these are what. Those are not the issues Kenyans are grappling with. Kenyans are grappling with real issues affecting all Kenyans. We are hearing Floridians telling us that the next election will be determined by the tribal numbers. Wewe enda ukuje na kabila yako, useme umekuja na watu wangapi. Wewe ukuje na watu wangapi, wewe ukuje na watu wangapi. Why don't they tell us that kila mtu ende, each kingpin, akuje na watu maskini. Wakabila waletwa kwa meza, so that the money they have plundered over the years they can give to these people, because it's like a bargaining chip for these tribes, but the entire country is going down. It's very funny. My friend come from Kiambu, Angel Mbuthia, and I can tell you now, a place where people it was unheard of lining up for relief food. Nowadays people in Kiambu, a place where we have people growing coffee and tea and everything, Gatundu, they're lining up for relief food from morning 8. Kiambu.
A dormitory county of Nairobi.
Among the richest county, apart from Nairobi, is the richest county in this country. Yeah. People are lining up kupo gorogoro ya maragwe and from bursaries. 8 and bursaries. From 8 in the morning to 7 upe gorogoro moja. You can tell the trajectory that our country has taken. And if you are not careful, there'll be no country here. We'll go Nepal way.
So Angel, looking at it and picking it from what Chege is saying, there is a myriad of issues that is happening. The potential recycling of leaders. Actually, I call them politicians. Those are not leaders. The perennial strikes of the teachers, the teaching fraternity. They almost make it appear that striking is part of practice. So if in your tenure you don't strike, then you are not a good practitioner. From the lack of participation, because now you're in the youth league of a political party, and one would wonder what would be the chances of even you being nominated to be like a presidential candidate in the party or any other party that you would join. All this issues, when people look at them, today we are looking at another scandal where the church is really not upholding the morality concept that it should in the society. From your reading, what are we lacking as a country?
I think my reflections this week were quite based on the movement in Nepal, and Kenyans are looking at pictures from Nepal and they are wondering, is this AI? And Kenyans are typing and deleting. Because, it's like when you're doing exams and your neighbor copies even your registration number and your name. And Nepal did exactly that. And they were not afraid to say that this is a Gen Z protest, just like the one Kenya did. And they took our playbook, our blueprint, and they did it word for word. And Kenyans are looking at themselves and like, we are the inventors of this. We are the founders. Now Malawi is doing the same. And we are looking at a continent that has been inspired, or even a globe that has been inspired by the youth of Kenya. But when we look at ourselves, we are wondering, where exactly are we? Even when the Daily Nation puts it out that it is a shock that 1 billion is needed for polls. That's just 10 meetings in State House per day. I don't see that one as a very big budget to go into a democratic process, because otherwise it would be chaotic. And remember that we don't have the same support we've had from our partners from the West. The West is not going to help us do civic education, so it is going to come from the taxpayers' budget. And that is appropriate. That is how it should be. We are supposed to be an independent country, and we should run our own polls. If we believe in our democracy, we should pay for it. And this is where I come to remind the people of Kenya that a vote does not cost 1,000 shillings. You cannot take 1,000 shillings and vote in a particular way because of 1,000 shillings. We must be reminded that a vote, I can only equate a vote to a life. Because when you vote, you decide who lives and who dies. When you vote, you decide who controls the budget of Kenya. That is the value of a vote. And that needs to be passed across to the people of Kenya. And I'm glad that we are slowly coming to that realization. And even when we look at a government where we're even having conversations on social media, when I say that I don't like this government, I'm told you are a Kikuyu, that's why you don't like this government. You are not, you think that it has to be a Kikuyu who needs to be president. And now people start having the conversation in their homes of, okay, are we going back to the tribalism question? And even Mr. Ruto talked about it in State House and said that I don't hate the people of Muranga, and no one tell you this conversation about tribalism. And I think the government is using tribalism as its chief propaganda machine, because when I look at government, this Kenya Kwanza government got into power through a classical theory of the hustler versus dynasty, and now we are in an intergenerational war, and the government has no chance in changing that. So what do? The government brings up the conversation of tribalism. It is the 42 against 1. And I was so inspired by the people of Kenya when, after the BBC documentary was aired, and Kenyans decided to say that if it is the Kikuyus who are said to be hating this government, then I'm Charles Kamau Owino. And that became a very interesting conversation, because we should not be taken back to the politics of 1997. We're in 2025. We're going into 2027. For goodness sake, we are in the era of artificial intelligence. We cannot be boxed into tribalism of Kikuyuism and Luoism and all that has grappled this country since independence.
Well, yes, and when you look at it, because you mentioned very well that the spirit of the Gen Z, which for me is a Gen Z revolution, sparked a global conversation, because we've seen many countries, including even some of our neighboring countries, they had attempts of trying to own their democratic space and inspire the change that they want. Do you feel that the Gen Z revolution is still on, given that perhaps we may not have been able, or Kenyans may not have been able to go full throttle like the Nepalese did? Is it maybe we uphold our democracy more because we have a constitution that gives us gaps on how to fix the gaps? But do you feel a Gen Z revolution spirit is still up?
Yeah, that's why I have a beef with the Beninois and their proverb of it is better to look than to bite. Yes. And I think that the Gen Z revolution, we are in the revolution as we speak. And it was very traumatizing for the young people of Kenya to see their brains being splattered outside Parliament, and that's something they are not able to move away from. And it has become so risky in Kenya that being on a show like this one and speaking my mind and posting a post on Twitter or on X can land me in jail or even be the end of my life. And these are some of the things that we are coming to a realization, because for a long time I've been wishing maybe the Gen Z protests could have happened 1 year to election, but the silver lining in having it far away from the election as it has been is because we have time to reflect and we have time to have these conversations, because we'll go to an election very emotional and we'll just make another mistake like we made in August 9th of 2022. Now when we are going into the election of 2027, we will have a clearer mindset. We'll decide, do we want people who can speak on top of cars, or do we want people who can actually fix an economy? And that's the conversation the young people of Kenya are having on the X spaces. Those are the conversations that young people want to have. I mean, if it's about running for office, when you look at MCA seats, over 2,000 of them, and young people only have 300. MCA seats, these are seats that should be predominantly for young people. When you go to MP seats,
why should they be why should they be predominantly for young people? And are we talking about affirmative action here in order to prove that certain things can happen? Or should we say no, because we have a bulging youth population that we should then, because of the numbers, have them in those seats?
If I want to talk about a conversation about elective politics over the years in Kenya, I would go and ask myself, do I have the money to run for office? And when I look at an MCA seat, it is your locality, it is your home. You do not need the publicity of getting known from Mombasa to Kisumu to Garissa. If you are a young man, young woman in Garissa, you can be elected by your own locality. That is a locality you can campaign on foot, ideally. And you can be able to collect signatures on foot. This should be the easiest seat for young people to get across the country, because it's not like a seat like governor where you need to traverse over like Kiambu 12 constituencies, or Nairobi, or other counties, even Marsabit and north and eastern parts of Kenya. I mean, crisscrossing the counties, just the logistical nightmare of elections. For an MCA should be something that a young person anywhere in Kenya should be able to get. You don't need the aspect of clanism. You don't need the aspect of even gender. That is a seat, if you work very hard for, you can get as young people. And these are seats that control a huge budget of counties in Kenya.
Yes.
And that is where we can even make the most meaningful of change, because one of the most impactful political seats that are there in Kenya is the MCA seat. It is that seat that can be able to, where they are the most accessible to the people of Kenya, because you should be able to call your MCA. Your MP perhaps might not be available every other time, but an MCA is always there. It is one of the most difficult seats that we have today. It is one of the most unappreciated seats that we have today. And I think those are seats that young people should occupy at least at 50%, because the rate at 2,000, over 2,000 seats, and we are only occupying 300. Why is that the case?
Then Chege, one would argue the approach of segregation is used depending on who is telling the conversation. So the higher level politicians are using the tribal matrix to divide the country. And now the youth are saying, step away, you old people, let us, the youth, take it up. But at no point do we hear the conversation of efficiency, that meritocracy. Are we ready to have that conversation such that if you're young or old, yes, and I appreciate the social dynamics that go into getting into political office. It's an elective position, and it's an industry. Are we even treating it like an industry the way we treat the health industry, the agricultural industry? Because you say, I want to start being a farmer. There are things you need to do to become a farmer. If you want to be in an elective position, are we there yet to say there's some certain meritocracy standards that we need to look at, both as a voter and as an aspirant? Are we there yet, so that we end up with a better crop of leaders and perhaps grow our economy, grow our country?
My question is, who are we as a country? Who are we? Because number one, we don't know who are we as a country. We lost our tradition. Like she said that there's that country in Benin that they have their tradition. But Kenya, we don't have our tradition. We don't have our ethos. We don't know who we are. The youths are not fighting with the old people. There's no time the old people are fighting with the youth. because these seats are open. Anyone can contest. But because we don't even know who we are, that's why we have all these discrepancies. And maybe the older people are taking all these seats and the youth are not taking them. Because if you look at this country, if you look at yourself, the leaders we have, it is the mirror of who we are as the people. Because as a youth, when I go to my people in Nakuru and tell them I want to be their senator, it is the youths and the old people all together who will ask me, where leta pesa? Where leta pesa macho? The youths will not be like, you are one of us. Will not ask for money. And the old people will be like, you are a youth, that's why you're asking for the money. The older people, when they are vying, it is the youths and the old people who ask them for money. They don't ask for the integrity. They don't ask for the accountability. That's why we are saying that for us to change, we have to drain the entire swamp. We must start a conversation of having an identity as a nation. Because the reason I'm saying that is because we have seen even the young people who have been voted to offices, and they lack integrity. They are very corrupt, and they have been voted. We can have more young people into elective position, and it can even be worse. We have seen MCAs making even the life for governors hell on earth, because they are constantly asking for money to do things, because they want to do some things, because they think next election they will be just kicked out and they just go back to where they were. So in this country, we have started a culture whereby if you get into a political seat, in an elective seat, you must accumulate as much as possible. Hii kitu ya kuitwa mheshimiwa, for you to be a mheshimiwa, you must be driving a big car, a Prado or something. You cannot be a mheshimiwa walking around unachoma mahindi atwe ni mheshimiwa. But in fact nowadays hata ukinunua gari kubwa, people will start telling you, hey, mhesh. Even if you are a CEO of a company somewhere, because they think that's how it should be. So my question is, as a country, if we cannot define who we are first, the ethos, and we define the direction we want to take as a country, even if we populate that parliament and those assemblies with the youth, the culture might continue. Because even these older people, most of them, if you look at them in their years, they were voted as young people. But what sustained them there maybe was the integrity they had. Are you together? So for me, I have an issue as a country, because even if we are going to the next election and we cannot define that, we really need to change this country by coming up with a culture of leadership, whereby leadership is not going there to enrich yourself, of becoming a mheshimiwa, a servanthood kind of leadership. You are there to serve the people. We will still continue with this debate of older, younger, rich, poor, hustlers, dynasties. Because we have a hustler president. Look at him now. He's just accumulating.
Angel, let me throw you off a bit and say, I'm going to quote a statement here, that when officers tell Kenyans they have no fuel, many interpret it as bribery, but that is not the case. That's a statement from CS Interior, Kipchumba Murkomen. And I'm raising this statement on the backdrop that the Gen Z revolution is still on. There was flooding of police, at some point even the military, in the streets of Nairobi, in the streets of Kenya basically, who are deployed heavily. There was no shortage of fuel then. Tomorrow, if you dare to do a demonstration, I am sure the police will not call you first, or you'll not have to fuel them to come either, disperse you. What do you make of that, given this is a relatively younger person who is having a very high ministerial position making such remarks in modern Kenya?
Maybe know who the person is.
The Interior CS. Yes.
I think
it's on that page of the Daily Nation.
All right. I think that.
Well, he said was, but yeah.
We'll go with that.
I think sometimes I look at this, and we were having a conversation with my peers yesterday, and we were asking ourselves, when teachers are going to State House to get 10,000 shillings, who is on the wrong? Is it the teachers who went there, or is it the president who facilitated that whole process?
I would say all.
Because now we're looking at ourselves in a shrinking economy where we are living hand to mouth. Both the employed and unemployed are suffering in equal measure, and we are looking at an economy that has been shrunk to the size where we don't have a choice but to take what is available. And when you look at an officer uttering such words, it's trying to show that the government is not as wealthy as you think. But where are the resources going to? And these are the questions that he should be asked. Because when you say that you don't have money for fuel, but there's money to give to teachers at State House, and there have been about 10 delegations to State House. That's $1 billion. That's the 1 billion that we need for the polls even.
Yes.
And you look at some of the things that remind me of why we went into the Gen Z protests of 2024, and one of the triggers was, of course, the finance bill at that time. But then there was this MP who had carried bundles of cash going for a sports tournament.
Yes.
And then before that, you see a president going to a church to give millions in donation. And then you're telling Kenyans, please buckle up. And these are some of the small things that our leaders do, and they don't know how much they go into our subconscious. Because I remember even the Molo MP talking about the finance bill then, saying that we want to tax sugar because it causes diabetes. And that was taken like a joke on that show, but that was quoted when we were having the X-Space with the president. You have leaders who are uttering words blatantly, left, right, and center. When you say shoot to kill, I mean, they don't think that these words that they utter will come to bite them very soon. And the young people of Kenya are not forgetting. We know everything. Since the moment Mr. Ruto took the Bible and said, you know, when nikiweka Biblia chini, in 100 days, in 3 months' time, in 2 weeks' time, and even when you're talking about the recruitment of police, and we know very well how that process is marred by corruption, and you need to know someone to get anything. These are some of the things that pain young people, and that's why they go back to the streets, because we're even taking so much time before we even have children. We are taking so long because we cannot afford to have another extra mouth to feed. So when we go to the streets, we know it is a do or die situation, and these are the statements that are made by leaders or proposed leaders. And they land us into sheer mediocrity. Yeah. So even when I was listening to the president when he was speaking to teachers in State House and saying that he's been dealing with mediocrity, it's like he's been putting out fires for the past 3 years. Now he's asking for a better leg room so that he can be able to finish what he wanted to do in 2022. And Kenyans are having none of it. But I love Kenyans because when you're speaking to them, wanakuambianga mheshimiwa ni wewe uko ground. Wanakuwa wanasema term na ni teachers, but I'm sure even if you put 2 ballot boxes there and you put 2 contestants between a cow and him in that same room, I think the cow would still take the day.
Looking at it, it's been a very interesting, and we'll come back to you, Angel, because I understand your county, Kiambu. The doctors have been on strike, the interns have been recalled and reallocated to other more embracing counties. Because you spoke of do and die, we'll come back to you and see what you think about that situation. But Chege, looking at it from a different angle, I think at the beginning of the weekend, or at the end of the weekend, we had the impeached deputy president.
Yes.
He read out the CV of the president on the qualifications he has, on the certificate, the diploma, and all those. Some of them could be unpalatable words. But then the president also did a rejoinder the other day when he was really responding to that, basically. Where are we when you look at the decorum? You know, how are we going to have a more sanitized conversation when it comes to politicking? Because all these conversations of insult, Junaid said it's not yet time. I think he's building up his buffer on insults for when the referee calls the game to go. But what do you think about the morality surrounding our politics? Because when you say we as a people must define what we want, are we ready?
You see, it is deliberate. It is by design that they are doing that.
Right.
These issues of calling each other's name, they're making the politics, it's me, Gachagua versus Ruto. It's not about the issues that Kenyans are facing. Because I think at that platform, it will be better be used by addressing the issues that Kenyans are facing. But they are being diverted from the issues that they are facing to individuality. It's me, Gachagua, I'm not educated, it's him, he has a master's or PhD. We don't care about what you have. Because we had other presidents, we had Kibaki. Kibaki was one of the best students of economics, even in London School. He never at any given time told the public or Kenyans that he was learned, that's what he was doing, But today, if you look at the modern Kenya, we can trace it to Kibaki. development that we had, all these bypasses. He's the one who designed and planned the kind of the economy we have right now. It is now at the time that we have leaders now coming because they are not able to achieve what they told the Wananchi, that now have a PhD. Why didn't you tell us that when you are going around ukikulaga mahindi na mandazi kwa barabara and you are calling yourself a hustler? Ulisoma bila viatu. Why didn't you tell us you had a PhD then? Why didn't you tell us you are the most educated president then? Yeah? Why didn't you tell us then that your deputy was not educated? Because you are the one who chose your deputy, and you, as a PhD holder, you could not have gone and chosen a person who is not educated, but you chose him. So you are trying to divert the issues that the Gen Z were bringing. And if you look at it, the reason I'm saying it's deliberate is because since Gen Z happened, there has been a deliberate effort by the politicians from both sides of the opposition and the government to make sure that Kenyans will not come together on the basis of issues. Because if they do, I'm telling you, the Kenyans will start opening their eyes on what they are going day-to-day, daily basis. And this poverty is manufactured by these politicians. I'm telling you, the Gen Z spirit will come back. So the issues of those shenanigans of telling us that is not here or there. Because if you are that educated, why don't you make education affordable for all? Right now, you are in that university, you got that PhD. The university lecturers, I'm doing law at the University of Nairobi. We have not been attending classes for the last 3 days. The lecturers are on strike. And then we have a president bragging to Kenyans how he is educated, how he has PhD. And instead of making sure the education is working, he's calling the stakeholders of education in State House to give them 10,000. I take a grudge with the leaders of the KUPPET, Akina Oyo and the rest.
Yes.
They should look in the mirror and see we had leaders that time, Akina Adongo.
Yes.
People who stood with what they believed in when Moi was there as a dictator, Akina Francis Nganga, and they stood for the education, and the education wakairainisha. But these are the people who are going to the State House when education, for the first time I saw it was, I think, Standard or Lady Nation 2 days ago, saying that for the 7 year, right now we are talking education is a 7-year law. This year. But at the same time, you have teachers going to State House saying that we have understood Ruto program of education. Me, I usually blame Ruto because maybe sometimes all these advisors he took, 50 advisors, maybe those voices in his head, they're the ones who are confusing him.
Okay. Do you think Kenyans, the things that we say, because the conversation has been one of frustration, the cries out of mediocrity for the last forever, have Kenyans really hit the wall? Because it would appear as though if the frustration is as high octane as we say it is, if that it's gotten to a point where really you're out of depth here completely, would we see a different kind of reaction beyond just the complaint? Or are folks actually waiting for a constitutionally mandated activity such as the ballot to then be able to register solidly their frustration? Are Kenyans frustrated enough? Is the talk that we're seeing in so many circles enough to deal with the problem? Or are folks saying, you know what, we're just going to wait it out, and when we get to the ballot, then you will see, and we will manifest our frustration in the vote? Is that what's happening?
I would think that, yes, that is happening, because as I earlier on mentioned, the government of Kenya did a despicable thing, and how it handles the protests in Kenya. And it really went into shocking the youth of this country. It was really a traumatic experience where we went to funeral after fundraiser, or going to hospitals to visit our colleagues who had burns because of tear gas canisters, explosions. And those are things that really went and sunk deep into the minds of the youth of Kenya, that a simple call for governance, proper governance, is something that could lead to the ending of a life. And even Albert Ojwang's death, and looking at how even he was buried in his home in Homa Bay. And I think that these are things that are settling into the minds of the people of Kenya. And when we look at those moments, we are asking ourselves, how exactly do we want to go about it? Who is the problem in the government of Kenya? Is it the president, or is it the president and the entire system? Do we go the Nepal way, where we take him out and we put in someone else? Or do we wait for a constitutional moment where we are able to register as voters? Because we are still the same it's still the same register of voters that elected him into office, and now looking at it coming with the by-elections and going into the elections in 2027, though they seem far, but I think that if there would be that, you call it the stroke that breaks the camel's back, we still have 2 more June 25th to come. We still have 2 more Sabasaba days to come. We will commemorate these days as we have in the past. And if the government does something that is despicable, then we will not hesitate to go the Nepal way. We have seen it work, and we know it can work, because this country, because I look at myself as a young Kenyan who has gone to school and is looking forward to a bright future, and I know that every day that Mr. Ruto sits in the helm of the leadership of this country is a doomsday for Kenya. I have no future with him as president, and if he continues to joke with every sensitive sector of this country, then I don't believe why he should continue sitting in that office, even if we have to wait for a constitutional moment of 2027.
And speaking of constitutional moment, and don't lose your Kembu comment on what is happening. Yesterday there was the birth of leadership, new birth of leadership in the Safina party, and now Jimmy Wanjigi is the party leader. And he'll be launching the feast agenda. And one of the things he's talking about loudly about is the odious debt. Because you see, we lose a lot of money into this, what you would call regime debts. Basically, they are illegal, illegitimate, should not be paid. They ought not to be paid by Kenyans. Perhaps we could plow back those resources to develop our systems. The next thing he speaks about is free education. We say 7 times all-time low level of education. Just play that forward in 10 years. You'll have people who can maybe read and write, but they cannot. They're not useful in the industry. They'll be struggling a lot. And yet the Gen Z movement, a revolution rather, was facilitated in my own way by the seed that Kibaki planted of free education. So when we mess up education now, we are moving the country back 20 years, it will come back 10 years later. So does that excite you? I know people have different political parties now, but when you look at what the country needs, when you hear the issue of odious debt, the issue of free education, the lowering of the VAT, among other things that we need intervened, forget the political party, forget the person. When you hear those issues, should they be realized, do you think we're going to have a better country? Do you think we can have a systematic change again?
I think, number one, I attended the meeting, the Safina, as executive director of PNU, because Safina is a party that has been in opposition, and they have been there since second liberation, led by Paul Mbuthia. Now they are handing over the party leadership to Mr. Jimmy Wanjigi. And one thing I can say that Jimmy Wanjigi has been very consistent on this issue of odious debt.
He has.
And he has been trying to explain to Kenyans that there is no way this country will develop with this odious debt on our back. Because the president said that the other day that he has been paying this debt. But if you look at this debt, it's not reducing, it's increasing. You are at 10 trillion. Now we are 12 trillion.
Yes.
So you are wondering what is happening in this country. Because this debt, if you are paying, it should be reducing. But it's increasing to a point that now it is becoming unsustainable. That for 100 shillings, Kenyans are collecting as taxes. Over 70 are going to the payment of debts. And we have even the president, the current president, was trying to set up a task force to look at this issue of odious debt. But it's so hypocritical because he has been there for the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2022. He was the deputy president. You can't tell us that you are forming a task force of people who are not part of the government, but you are part of the government. You knew what was going on. Right. So he should come out clearly and tell us what this issue of odious debt is saying. Because Kenyans are looking at that issue of odious debt and are saying, I think that is something that, apart from the Gen Z movement and everything and changing this country, we should have a serious conversation on this odious debt to see do you see some of these things coming to the realization? Because let's look at the processes and how they operate.
Yes. We know very well the Parliament is a budget-making body. Yes. It's a legislative body. Make the laws and tell us how we're going to spend the money, and then give your assent to it.
Do you have a parliament?
Do you see Parliament, for example, saying no to a debt ceiling where we've already been told by the President himself that there is corruption that goes on in Parliament? Do you see them coming up with a law that's going to curtail this kind of activity? Do you see, for example, senators going in to grill governors? We see the grilling, but what happens after that? When 400 million shillings cannot be explained, when 20 million shillings cannot be explained, do we see that senators, do we see that members of Parliament go to Parliament and make the law to insist on prosecutions after things from the Office of the Auditor General or the Controller of Budget come to light? Do we see that kind of activity? Can we realistically say that we expect such things to happen?
And that's why the words of PLO Lumumba come to life, that fagia wote, drain the entire swamp. Because you can't have the same people in 2013 who are approving all these debt ceilings are the ones who are auditing it again. But if you can't have fresh people who don't have that mess, they can be able to do it. We had the president the other day telling Kenyans that we no longer have parliament. Ni soko huru, whereby vitungu zinauzwa, nyanya zinauzwa, anything that goes can be sold in that parliament. That is the president admitting. In fact, he even admitted that he gave them 10 million. Yeah. And because he's among the buyers of that soko, he's a participant in that soko. Akasema mimi niliwapatia 10 million, iliwafikia because of so what I'm saying is that currently with the parliament that we have, it's not possible. But if Kenyans can come with that slogan, fagia hawa watu wote, we try and try to salvage because that's all debt with the parliament we have. I'm telling you, it will never see the light of the day, because hawa watu walikuwa from 2013, from siku ya Kibaki up to today.
As you fagia wote, as we work towards that constitutional moment, if we went in a police way, without any serious policy changes, any serious systemic adjustment, would we amount to much? You know, would that solve our odious debt? Would that make education free? Should we go to the Nepalese way?
I think if we went to the Nepalese way, I think the person I would install as president, I would vote for is Fred Matiang'i, whether he is ready or not. Because I think we need firm people, and we need someone at the top of the leadership who is firm enough. Because when you talk about odious debt and education and the people who negotiate this debt for us are the people we give at the ballot the opportunity to do that. So whether it's illegal or we are going to pay or not, it is a commitment that was made by the Kenyan government. When you see the government printer being moved to State House, then you know this odious debt is quite difficult to go around it, because Parliament is the one that is responsible to do that, not even the people of Kenya, because for them is maybe to petition some of these things, but the Parliament of Kenya is the one that has the sole authority to do that. So when we talk about the changes that we want to see in this country, Parliament is not even with the people of Kenya, because we saw even Mr. Ruto during the PAG asking parliamentarians, did you receive that money you were supposed to get to pass the anti-money laundering bill? and you see, that's the kind of conversation they are having amongst themselves. So when you're talking about debt ceiling and all that, it is Parliament that has that mandate, not me or you in this room. For us, it's just to critique and to talk about it. But our mandate will come at that constitutional moment. And I think when we are able to now look at the kind of leaders that we have, we need firm people. We need people who are no nonsense, they don't joke, and people who, you know, we take life so casually. The way we skip the traffic lights on our highways is the same way you skip a bill in Parliament, or you pass a bill in Parliament that goes to change the lives of you and your children. So we need people who are firm and people who are stuck. Like you were talking about the issue about Kiambu. I think there's more of politics going on in Kiambu than any other thing. Now we're talking about a funeral that took place, and that has become the conversation of the day. And we have members of county assembly who are hell-bent on trying to show the governor that we can also show you the middle finger. You can go, we can impeach you. And you know, that has become the contest in our county assemblies of today, that it's about showing the governor, if you don't toe the line, we are going to do this to you, and you take away the independence of the governor. Even now dragging other leaders like Gathoni wa Mushomba, who's, you know, the internet is saying that they've cancelled her. But I also want to tell to remind the people of Kenya that you cannot, Gathoni wa Mushomba can only be cancelled by the people of Githunguri who elected her. So there's a lot of politics going on in Kiambu, and that is my county of interest. I want to run for women rep Kiambu there. Ndu, please, I've come back.
When we start,
you called it.
Yeah, so I think that the youth of this country need to take their center stage, and they have never been leaders anywhere before in the government, or at least. But if we can take up these spaces, running for office is one thing. I think my colleague here, Chege, you're also running for office, and that is what most of us must do. Running for senator in Nakuru, and that is what we must do across the country. We must work together and bring an overhaul so that we are able to have accountability. Right now, you can't talk about impeaching Mr. Ruto because Parliament is in his pocket, and that is the only constitutional method to take him out. So we must be careful of our Parliament. We must be careful of our county assembly because they are directly related to our lives of every day today.
And that's the week that was. Just looking at a number of these things, these conversations, as hot as they are now, cannot lose the temperature, because that's what we're talking about now. And it's not just voting, but it's also filling up those positions whereby there needs to be accountability, transparency, and proper management. But again, they don't end. The conversations continue. Angel Mbuthia is the national chairperson of the Jubilee Youth League, and she told you she's running for women rep Kiambu County. Chege Majuice is the executive director of the Party of National Unity. He's also said he's running for senator in Nakuru County. Thank you both for being here, keeping these conversations front and center. We must continue. Asante sana.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.